And it's great to have you with us. Thanks for joining us, everybody, all around the world. This is your host, Jim Masters, and we are on Jim Masters Show Live right now. Worldwide, we are streaming and simulcasting on YouTube at Jim Masters TV and also on Facebook at Jim Masters TV. And we say thank you to you and you and you and you and everybody all around the world for joining us on this entertainment lifestyle talk show. Again, as many of you know, I do this for a living. I'm a professional television radio host, a voiceover artist, actor, writer, producer, stage MC, you name it, journalist. And I am so happy to have you here because this is week number 6. Yes, this is our 6th week since we created the Jim Masters Show Live, and the outpouring of support and love has been extraordinary. Thank you so much, everybody, for welcoming us into your homes, into your offices, into your life. We really appreciate it. So much feedback and fanfare has been happening about this show. It's the light and it's the levity and it's the love that we're sharing with phenomenal guests, fun segments, and so much more. You never know what's going to happen on the Jim Masters Show Live, and we love that. And again, so many people have been writing. They've been sharing the links. They've also been having watch parties and following us at Jim Masters TV on YouTube, following us at Jim Masters TV on Facebook. And so many people have been hopping on the show, too. We're booked with guests all the way till first couple of weeks of July, which is outstanding. So thank you for joining us. If this is the very first time you're joining us here on the show, we welcome you. We're here every night, 7 p.m. Eastern, nightly, 4 p.m. Pacific, every single night. I signed up for every single night. Oh, yes, I did. Every single night, 7 p.m. Eastern, and it's a pleasure to have you here. And as you know, we always toast to you and you and you and you and you and you, and we welcome you to the Jim Masters Show Live. And of course, I know you always look for them. We did a nostalgic week a couple of weeks ago, and I brought on some childhood toys and other cool stuff, and all of you showed your childhood toys as well. Well, we also introduced that week our good friend, my sidekick, George Burns, with his glasses and his cigar. He's ready to go as well. Again, you guys voted to keep him on the show. He's sort of my Ed McMahon. He's here. He keeps an eye on Jeannie in the I Dream of Jeannie bottle. So he greets you around the world as well. There's your George Burns. Look at that face, huh? How can you resist a face like that? So George is here to open up the show with me as well. And of course, you guys love Jeannie. So Jeannie is in the official hand-painted I Dream of Jeannie bottle. And again, you know, I try to get her to come out of this bottle, but for some reason, she still won't come out because she hasn't made the appointment at the hair salons yet. The hair salons, you know, with all we've been going through, have been closed. So she hasn't been able to get the hair done, and she lost her powers. She's been quarantined in this bottle since March. So how you doing in there tonight? You doing all right? Yes, Master. So she's hanging in there, but hopefully by this weekend, Jeannie will be able to come out of that bottle. Maybe she'll get her powers back. I think she's got to call Haji or somebody to get the powers back so she can get her hair done and she can say hi to you. And of course, everybody likes to see Silver. Silver is here. Again, the show is all about light and levity and love. Silver we picked up when we were on a television shoot in Europe. Silver comes from Switzerland, so Silver says hello. And one more character. Again, you know, every host has their props and characters, although I wouldn't tell them that they're props. They are part of the cast, right? I think all of them would be upset if they were considered props. They are our friends here on the show. Of course, you got to have Jimmy, right? Jimmy the Clown says hello. There he is. Again, how can you really, when you look at this face, how can you resist a face like this? I'm not talking about mine. I'm talking about Jimmy. He says hello. He's here as well. And as you know, we go big time here on the Jim Masters Show Live, as we have an audience all across the United States, Canada, Europe, Asia. We've heard from Australia, and we welcome everybody from wherever you're watching. We go big time with going a little Hollywood. Lights, camera, and action. Lights, camera, action. We are ready to go. Boy, do we have a terrific show for you tonight. A phenomenal guest who is extraordinary. He's extraordinary in terms of his creativity, his contributions to animation and writing and producing and television and laughter and comedy. I'm so excited to welcome him to the show. And he's been really excited about coming on, and I appreciate that. We've been chatting back and forth. Going to show you a little picture. Matter of fact, that might be a little clue behind me there if you get an idea of what I'm talking about. You know how we always change the set and the screen based on the theme of the show or the guest? That might be a big clue for you. Let's see how many people gets who our guest is. We're very excited to have him here on the show. Going to tell you first a little bit about our amazing guest. I love this picture here. That's a really fantastic picture. I really love this picture coming up. Isn't that cool? There he is. That is Mike Reiss. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and then I'll show you some more pictures, and then we will welcome him to the show. Michael Reiss, born in Connecticut, in Bristol, and he's an American television comedy writer and author. Served as showrunner, writer, and producer for the animated series The Simpsons. He also co-created the animated series The Critic. He created and wrote the webtoon Queer Duck, and has also worked on screenplays including Ice Age, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, The Simpsons movie, and My Life in Ruins. The middle child of 5, his mother was a local journalist in Connecticut, and his father a doctor. He studied at Harvard, and he studied English, but he didn't really like the course. So he focused his attention really on comedy, and we are so happy that he did. Performing in talent shows and writing. And Holworthy Hall at Harvard, he met his fellow freshman Al Jean. They befriended one another and collaborated their writing efforts for the humor publication Harvard Lampoon, of course. Now, Mike became co-president of the Harvard Lampoon alongside John Vitti, Jeff Martin, another writer for Lampoon. And, people have said about both of them that they definitely loomed large around that magazine. They were very funny guys and unusually polished comedy writers for their age. Nobody was ever surprised that they went on to the successes that they have achieved. The humor magazine National Lampoon hired both Al and Mike after they graduated in 1981. And in the 80s, the duo began collaborating on various television projects. During this project, or this period, these projects were amazing. Mike and Al worked as writers and producers on television shows such as The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson from 84 to 86, Alf, Sledgehammer, and its Gary Shandling show as well. And in 89, Mike was hired along with Al as the first members of the original writing staff of the Fox Network animated series The Simpsons. He worked on 13 episodes of the show the first season, 89, then became executive producers and showrunners of The Simpsons at the start of the third season in 91. Now, as a showrunner, has the ultimate responsibility of all the processes that an episode goes through before completion, including the writing, the animation, the voice acting, and the music. And the first episode Al and Mike produced was Mr. Lisa Goes to Washington, which aired September 19th, 1991, and they felt a lot of pressure to make them good. Matter of fact, they were so pressured that they did 6 to 7 rewrites of the script to make it funnier. And Al and Mike served as showrunners until the end of the 4th season, 93. And since the show has already established itself, in the first 2 seasons, they were able to give it more depth during their tenure. Sam Simon has stated The Simpsons wouldn't have been The Simpsons without Mike Reiss. Reiss has won 4 Primetime Emmy Awards for his work on the show. They left after season 4 to create The Critic. You may remember that one too, an animated show about film critic Jay Sherman, who was voiced by John Lovitz. That's the ticket. The show is executive produced by The Simpsons co-developer James L. Brooks, and it was first broadcast on ABC in January 1994 and was well received by critics. A total of 23 episodes were produced, and it returned briefly in 2000 with a series of 10 internet broadcast webisodes. And the series has since developed a cult following thanks to reruns on Comedy Central and its complete series release on DVD. Back in 94, Mike and Al signed a 3-year deal with the Walt Disney Company as well to produce other TV shows for ABC. And that was a lot of fun for them to do that. And the pair periodically worked on The Simpsons as well. In addition to A Star Is Burns, they produced Round Springfield for season 6. Both episodes were written with the aid of their fellow writers from The Critic. He also co-wrote the screenplay for The Simpsons movie in 2007. He also, along with director Zeth Feinberg, independently produced Hard Drinkin' Lincoln, a series of 16 flash animated cartoons for Icebox.com. Mike collaborated with Feinberg again to independently produce a short internet cartoon series entitled Queer Duck for Icebox.com. Mike has contributed to numerous film screenplays as well. He wrote several jokes for the Ice Age, the film Ice Age, after The Simpsons colleague David Silverman asked him and John Vitti to help out with the film's story issues. He later wrote a number of screenplays, including Ice Age, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, and Horton Hears a Who. The first live-action film he wrote was 2009's My Life in Ruins, starring Nia Vardalos. And he also published 17 children's books, including How Murray Saved Christmas, published by Penguin. He also won an Edgar Award for his mystery story, Cro-Magnon, P.I., co-authored by Matthew Glickstein. His memoir, Springfield Confidential, Jokes, Secrets, and Outright Lies from a Lifetime Writing for The Simpsons, was published by Day Street, an imprint of HarperCollins, back in June of 2018. Mike's first play, I'm Connecticut, set box office records at Connecticut Repertory Theater in December 2011. The Hartford Courant called the romantic comedy hysterically funny and named it one of the top 10 productions of the year. It was named Best Play of 2012 by Broadway World, Connecticut. That is just a tiny slice of the career that this gentleman has had. Let me show you some of these great photos we have here. We're going to talk about some of them as well. He's just had a wonderfully charmed life because he's worked so hard. There is also Springfield Confidential. It's also been translated into Spanish as well. And again, he is just somebody who has put his heart and soul in everything that he does. And it's so reflected in the work. Of course, The Simpsons, which we love so much. And of course, there's another great shot. And of course, The Critic. Some really cool photos that we dug up out of the archives here. And here's one that looks vaguely familiar, doesn't it? Some really cool shots here. So we're going to talk about his life, his career, projects that he's working on currently as well. There's from, again, The Critic, as we welcome to the show the one and only Mike Reiss, TV comedy writer extraordinaire, author and producer, and so much more. He's live and direct right now from New York City. Mike, good evening.
That was
good to have you with us.
Experience. I just saw my whole life flash before my eyes. Very impressive. Amazing. Great research. Thank you.
You are very, very welcome, my friend. It's quite amazing when you get a chance to hear back some of the extraordinary things that you've been involved in your career, right? It's when did you first realize that you wanted to go into comedy? I mentioned early on, when you were in Harvard, you were studying English, but then you sort of switched into comedy. But did people think when you were a kid that you were funny around the house anyway?
It's a very important distinction. Like, I wasn't the class clown. I was the writer for the class clown. So I would sit there and think of something and write it down and give it to my friend Kyle, and I'd go, try this. So that's it. I was born to be a comedy writer. I never wanted to be a comedian. I never wanted to be a performer. That's it. I just wanted to write for funny people. I remember listening to comedy albums when I was a kid, and if something got a big laugh, I would always say, oh, I wish I wrote that. I never said I want to be Alan Sherman or Tom Lehrer or whoever I would listen to. I'd just go, oh, I wish I wrote that. And I would have been very happy. It's the career I wound up in, but I would have been just happy being the guy who wrote that nobody ever heard of, nobody knew his name, that was just propping up somebody funnier who wanted to be out there.
Where do you think that inspiration comes from, Mike? I mean, were there other members of the family that were in comedy, or did you have influences growing up that sort of spurred this passion for comedy?
No. I'm from a very funny family. As you mentioned, there's 5 kids in my family, and my parents were both very funny. And we kept in the bathroom, which is where Jewish people spend most of their time, we kept a copy of Joey Adams' Joke Encyclopedia. It was this 500-page joke book. And, by age 8 in my house, you had memorized Joey Adams' Joke Encyclopedia. That was our Old Testament in the house. So we just loved jokes and we loved humor. And when I first stepped into a comedy writer's room, with a room full of funny people, I go, oh, this is, this is just like Thanksgiving dinner at my house. So very funny people, but nobody did it professionally. And I never thought I would do it professionally. I always thought I'd wind up a funny lawyer, or in my town, I had a very funny dentist, and, he'd make me laugh and he'd cause me severe pain. And that's it. That's it. I thought I would be the funny guy who's very bad at whatever career he wound up in. I never expected this.
It's really amazing, isn't it? So back in Harvard, you started collaborating with Al, right? And that was a magical time for you, because that's when those collaborative creative juices really started flowing, and you started connecting and really creating, right?
Yes, it was an amazing thing. I went to Harvard just to join the Harvard Lampoon. Nothing really had appealed to me about Harvard, except I just vaguely knew they had a humor magazine there. And I go, oh, that sounds like fun. I like to write. And I went to Harvard, and maybe the second day of college, I went to the Harvard Lampoon building. They have this very exotic castle in Harvard, in Cambridge. It was built by one of the founders of the Harvard Lampoon, and they always say this was either the last building he built before he went insane, or the first one he built after he went insane. And it's this giant brick sphinx, and it has a face, and it's full of weird secrets in the building. But so I go up to the Harvard Lampoon building and said, I would like to join your magazine. And they said, well, it doesn't work like that at all. And it's a very rigorous, tough competition to get on the Harvard Lampoon. Every semester, 100 people would try out, and 6 or 7 would get elected to the staff. And almost nobody got elected the first time. You had to go through this very, very rough process, at least twice. And so that was it. I tried out my first semester. I was rejected. I went through it the second semester, and if I hadn't got elected the second semester, I was going to leave Harvard. I had no real interest in the place other than the Lampoon. And show you how tough it is, but maybe the funniest writer in TV right now is a guy named Dave Mandel. He's the guy who took over the show Veep in the fourth season. And from the moment he took control of the show, it won the Emmy for Best Comedy year after year. And Dave Mandel is a hilarious guy. He had to go through this Harvard Lampoon competition 5 times, 5 semesters trying to get on. And so it was very good. It separated the people who were dabblers from the people who really believed in it and really wanted to do it.
So when you were there and you were working on the Lampoon, how did you end up then making this progression? As you came out of school, did you jump right into television writing? Were those opportunities there, or was there a lot of, running around you had to do prior to all of this happening?
It was very quick, but it was a surprise. I mean, the Harvard Lampoon, when I was there, had been around for 109 years, and nobody went into comedy. This was something you did as an undergraduate. And then, as I say, you would go off and become a funny banker or a funny anesthesiologist or something like that. The most famous person to come out of the Harvard Lampoon in its first century was Fred Gwynne, the guy who played Herman Munster.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He was the funniest man to come out of the Harvard Lampoon for the first 100 years. And then in 1970, 3 graduates of the Harvard Lampoon went off and formed National Lampoon magazine, which people of a certain age remember how that changed comedy and how big that was. And it just instantly became the biggest magazine in America and produced all this talent. And so the story is, I was at Harvard. I think it was my senior year, and I got a call from National Lampoon magazine, and they said, we've been reading your stuff in the Harvard Lampoon, and we think you're really funny. We'd like to give you a job. And I said, you read the Harvard Lampoon? And they said, well, we've been reading it for years. We just never saw anything funny before. So right out of college, they hired me and Al Jean, and we went to New York. And we worked at the magazine for about 10 months. And I loved it. I loved living in New York. I was a small town kid. I loved being in New York City. And the job at National Lampoon was so easy, and it was so much fun. And you could write whatever you wanted, and they would print it, and that was a pleasure. But the magazine was going downhill. It was not beloved. The subscription numbers were going down, and everybody knew they had to get out. They had to get out of there. And so I had been recommended, Al and I had been recommended to a producer in Hollywood named Ken Finkelman. Ken Finkelman was writing and directing a movie you may have heard of. It was called Airplane.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Airplane 2. It was a comedy so bad it won an award in France. And but that was it. Ken Finkelman needed joke writers, and he went to my friends Max and Tom. Remember those names, Max and Tom. He went to them, said, you want to work on Airplane 2? And they said no, but they recommended Al and I. So Al and I did something sort of unforgivable, which is we walked into National Lampoon the next day. We quit our jobs, and they liked us there. You know, they had just given us a raise. We quit our jobs. We ran out on our lease. We had an apartment in New York, and we got on a plane, went to LA, and the next morning we were on the set of Airplane 2 writing jokes. It was just crazy.
So how did that make you feel? I mean, when that was happening, all of a sudden, boom, you're in this major film production. You must have been pinching yourself, Mike.
It was pretty crazy. I got to tell you, it's kind of an off-color story, but I remember Al and I, we landed in LA at like 2 a.m, and we told the taxi driver, they brought us out here to work on this comedy movie. He goes, you're writing movies, you're going to get so much. He said, basically, so many women. And I thought, great. Al and I were so excited because a crazy cab driver at 2 a.m. said we were going to get a lot of women. And of course, he could have been wronger. You know, comedy writers do not get women. But that was it. We were very excited. And then we go to work on Airplane 2, and it had to be 120 hours a week. We just worked day and night. And this guy, Ken Finkelman, to get more work out of us, actually moved us into his home so we could work all day on the set and then go home with him and work all night. And I remember there was one night we're writing jokes till 2 a.m. And he said, we got to go to sleep. And Ken said, all right, get some sleep. But I want some fresh material by the time you wake up. So it's like, you want to write jokes in our sleep? So that was it. It was a very tough job, very crazy job. We'd come out to LA with 1 suitcase apiece. So we were working so very hard. There was literally not 1 hour to do laundry. So we had to keep, on our lunch breaks, we would go to the Paramount studio store and buy fresh clothing. That's how insane that job was. Wow. That was it. We worked on it for, I think, 6 months on the movie, day and night, crazy schedule. And then the movie came out. It was sort of a stiff. It was sort of a dud. And then suddenly nothing. There's Al and I living in LA, no job, no prospects. We had just written kind of a fiasco of a film. We didn't know anybody. So it went from lots and lots of hard work to no work and no excitement whatsoever. But that's the life of a writer, you know?
Right, exactly. Right. Anybody in the creative arts certainly knows that there's spells where everything's coming at you, and then spells where, you can hear crickets. So take us from there. What happened from there? You had that little bit of a dry spell, and then when did the next big surge come for you, Mike? If
I can tell this, it's a longer story, but I love to tell it, and I never get to tell it. It was in my book, and it was the only thing they cut out. So it's, I'm going to say 1983, Al and I are living in LA, again, no friends. We barely knew a soul there. And these are the days, I have to caution and explain to younger people, there was no internet, there was no DVD, TV, there was just television. You got 6 or 7 channels, and you had to watch what was on TV when it was on TV.
That's right.
You could read a book too, but come on. So anyway, so the only thing that got me through these long, sad weeks in LA was Wednesday night at 9:30 was the worst sitcom I'd ever seen in my life. It was a show called 9 to 5, and everybody remembers that was a pretty good movie, 9 to 5. And somehow they managed to turn it into the most abominable TV show I'd ever seen. And it starred, why can I not remember her name? Anyway, terrible. Rita Moreno and Dolly Parton's cousin, not Dolly Parton, but we got
not Dolly Parton.
And then we got a Hairspray model. So those were our 3 leads. Anyway, I would hate watch that show week after week. It was the highlight of my week. It was I would get a quart of beer, watch 9 to 5. And that was like church for me. That was my regular appointment. Anyway, there's a point to all this, which is one day, one afternoon, we get a call from the producers of 9 to 5, the show I'd been hate watching. And they said, like the script you'd written, will you come in for a meeting? And Al and I go in for the meeting. And I said, so our show is 9 to 5, and it's about 3 women, and they live in Cleveland. And I go, yeah. And they all share one apartment, and their son sleeps on a shelf over the sink, and they work in a factory that makes slotted spoons. And the producer goes, you watch our show? I go, I never miss your show. And he goes, you're hired. You're the first writer we've met who watches our show. So
wow.
So there I was. I got this job on the worst sitcom in TV history. And there was something very interesting about it, which is I go in to meet the writers, the first comedy writers I ever met with, assuming they're idiots because they wrote this terrible show. And they were all so bright. They were all so talented. One of the gentlemen, there's a writer there named George Bloom, who's the single funniest man I'd ever met in my life. But you can't escape a bad show with a bad premise, and especially if you have bad people running the show. And that was the problem with 9 to 5. So, we worked very, very long hours. It was just terrible. And then not only was my first TV job writing for the worst show on TV, then I got fired. They fired me and Al because we weren't good enough to write for the worst show on TV. So again, it looked a little grim. And then we just kept getting recommended for jobs. Our lovely job our boss at National Lampoon, whom we had quit on, recommended us for a job at Johnny Carson, and we worked for Johnny Carson for a couple of years. And
what was that like?
That was a very interesting job. This was again a very dark time in Johnny's life. It was around season 21 or 22. It was very tough writing too, because you had to, when you're writing for someone, you have to get in their head. And I was 23 and Johnny was 63, and I couldn't get a date, and he was currently going through his 3rd divorce. But so somehow I had to write for him, and that was it. I have to say, it was super exciting to be on the Tonight Show, to write a joke that morning, see Johnny Carson deliver it at 5:30 in the afternoon, and it would be all over the country that night.
Do you remember any of the ones that he recited?
The one joke I sticks in my mind is a joke I wrote when I was 8 years old. I wrote this joke, no man is an island, but Orson Welles comes pretty damn close. 8 years old, and then, 20 years later, I saw an opening for the joke on Johnny Carson, and he did the joke, and it got a laugh. So clearly I'd been wasting my time in grammar school and junior high when I could have been an 8-year-old writing for Johnny Carson.
So you had that comedy bug early. It was there, the understanding of the human condition.
Yeah. I might have been able to be writing professionally. I don't know. I was writing for National Lampoon as an undergrad, even. So from the age of 20, I've been able to make a living at it. But
So
I mean, before you get impressed by it, this is the only thing I can do. I can't type, I can't skate or ski, and I can't sing or dance. I am just super lucky that what I do happens to be a profession that they
but you figured out the link and you got on the show with me.
Yeah.
Or did you have help? Or did you have help with that?
Pushing it like it was a touch screen. So I find a young person to help me.
So take us then from that amazing experience. I mean, that's really learning, trial by fire there on the Tonight Show, of course, legendary, and the unbelievable Johnny Carson. Where did you go from there? What happened? Did that open more doors for you, being a writer on the Tonight Show?
No.
Really?
It's funny. We're working at the Tonight Show, Alan. When we got the job, one of the other writers said, "Congratulations, welcome to the Tonight Show. You'll be fired in 13 weeks." And everyone who had our position had gotten fired in 13 weeks. Again, Johnny was a very unhappy man, and whenever anyone's contract was up for renewal, he'd fire them. And so
a perfectionist too, right?
Has 13 weeks and 26 weeks, and we were there finally a year and a half. And yes, he fired us. And then 2 weeks later, he offered us our jobs back. And it's like, well, what did I learn in the past 2 weeks that suddenly I'm good enough to write for you? It was very strange, and none of it made any sense. But it was an exciting job. I can't say it was that fun.
And then from there, what happened?
From there, I think we went to Sledgehammer. New show, and it was a very risky show. It was sort of get smart with hard-boiled cops. It's a kind of show, again, it has a cult following, like the Critic. A very funny show. It was created by, I was young. I was like 23, and it was created by a guy who was a month younger than me. He was a man named Alan Spencer, who was really just sort of a child prodigy of comedy, and created this very funny show about brutally violent cops who rough up suspects. So probably not the best time to reboot the show, but very funny show. And we worked there for a year, and then we went to Alf, I think, the next year. And then our friends, Max and Tom, I mentioned Max and Tom getting us the job on Airplane 2. Max and Tom recommended us to Gary Shandling. We worked for the Gary Show for 2 years. And then the biggest they did
what was that?
2 years after that was they were offered the job on The Simpsons. Simpsons starting up. Didn't sound good to them. And they turned it down, and then offered it, recommended Al and I. And we went to The Simpsons, and we've been there now for 31 years. And
unbelievable.
Yes, and we'll certainly die there. And finally, after a few years, when Al Jean was in charge, he hired Max and Tom. Sooner or later, they were bound to wind up there.
Before we talk even more about The Simpsons, what was it like working with Gary Shandling and his crew? That must have been incredible, too.
It's a great show. Now, it wasn't the Larry Sanders Show. It wasn't.
Right.
He created this great show. It's Gary Shandling Show. And, it was an honor to work on it. It won lots of awards. And then he went off and created an even better, more beloved show, Larry Sanders Show, which made everyone forget about It's Gary Shandling Show. But very fun, creative show to work on. In many, many ways, it's the godfather of The Simpsons. Half our original writing staff of The Simpsons had worked on It's Gary Shandling Show. Sam Simon, creator of The Simpsons, had worked on It's Gary Shandling Show. And then, It's Gary, I guess I have to remind people, It's Gary Shandling Show was a sitcom about a guy who knows he's on a sitcom.
Right.
And so it just was completely freeing, you know, on the show to do whatever you want, to fill it with gimmicks and do a whole episode that's a movie parody and put in musical numbers and have celebrity guest stars walk on for no reason. And, you know, a few years later, these would become the hallmarks of The Simpsons. But every trick we did on The Simpsons, we had done earlier on It's Gary Shandling Show. So fun place to work. He was a terrible boss. He was a lovely, sweet, funny person, and just the worst boss you can imagine. Not a mean man, not at all, but impossible to please. He was very, very tough to please. And you see that in his comedy. You know, he was not happy with himself. Yes. He couldn't commit to anyone. He just was not a happy guy. And, you know, if he wasn't happy with himself, he was never going to be happy with what you brought him.
So a lot of what we saw in his characters of himself were really him living his life, right? That was really his personality and his struggles, and everything was right there on the screen.
Yes. You know, the one thing I never liked about Larry Sanders Show, it's an interesting thing. There's 3 people on Earth who worked for Gary Shandling and worked for Johnny Carson. Because, you know, the Larry Sanders Show was Gary Shandling's interpretation of the Johnny Carson Show. Now, Johnny Carson loved that show. But so Al Jean, myself, and a guy named Patrick Verone are the only people who worked for both people. And that show was not like either of them. That was not exactly Gary. And it was not at all what The Tonight Show was like. And I know so many people, so many critics at least, love the Larry Sanders Show because they go, this is TV. This is what it's really like, man. And in fact, no, it was nothing like that. But yes, Larry Sanders was a very dark version of Gary Shandling. Because, again, as I say, very sweet man, but just impossible to please. And I was thinking that just today, he never once said, I like this. Our whole job was to pitch jokes and stories to him. He never, this is what would happen. You'd pitch him an idea, and he goes, that's funny. And you go, great. He goes, that's funny because what I thought you were going to say is this. And then he would pitch his own idea. And that was it. That was the best I ever got out of him in years of working for him. And I wrote, I think, 12 episodes of that show.
It's amazing. Really amazing. So are you difficult to please for yourself? Do you demand a lot of yourself? Are you always writing and rewriting? And how do you know when it's finished and when it's right and when it meets your standard as well?
I don't, you know, there are writers who rewrite constantly and are never pleased. And I'm not that way, but I am a very deliberate writer. I never put it on paper unless I'm already happy with it. So, I mean, I think of it, I used to call it a crap filter, which I thought, well, that's inelegant. And then I found out Hemingway had the same term, but he didn't say crap. But you just, you know, I have a good sense of don't put it down till it's at least pretty good, you know, because it's very easy to put something down bad and then sort of fall in love with it. So,
right, exactly. So no, I think Hemingway said poo. I don't think he said crap.
Yeah. I write slowly, pretty methodically, and you know, things generally come out to my expectations. I think, you know, I set that standard. So when I write a play, that's just me. You know, anything you write for TV is going to be rewritten over and over. Anything you write for a movie will be rewritten endlessly, and people will tinker with it. So it wasn't until I was about 55 I wrote a play, and I wrote it very quickly, and I just filled it with the kind of jokes I always wanted to write, and it went great. It was the one you mentioned in the long introduction. It was this play that won set box office records. It won Best Play of 2012. It just played, wall-to-wall laughs. And so, yeah, I think I at least have a good crap filter. I think that's the way I do it.
Absolutely, methodically. So when the Simpsons opportunity came, what was that like for you? Because again, it was the beginning of it. It was something unproven and something that hasn't been tested yet. And now they're going to roll this out. And it was something different for television. It was unique. It was fresh. It was a totally different style of comedy in many ways from what had been on television before. So what was that experience like for you then entering that world together?
It was very fun. I know I've had so many complaining stories here. That was a really fun. It was a summer job. I was working at It's Gary Shandling's show, which, by the way, was the next to the lowest rated show on TV. It was 99 out of 100 shows, and number 100 was the Tracy Ullman show, which wound up giving birth to The Simpsons. The Simpsons started as 1-minute cartoons on the lowest rated show on television. So that was the attitude we all walked into it with. And except for Al Jean and myself, none of the original writers had ever even written a script before. They'd written sketches and joke for, late night comics. No one had written a script. We had no training in this thing. None of us had ever worked in animation. And so we were just having fun. We had so much fun. It was the only job I had where we'd work together all day. And then we'd all go out to the movies that night. We'd all have dinner together. We just didn't want the day to end. And the story I've told way too much is 2 weeks before The Simpsons came on the air, I'm sitting in the trailer with the other writers. And that tells you something right there. It was Fox had so little faith in the show. They didn't even give us a room. We didn't merit a room. We were in a trailer. And we figured if the show failed, we were just going to back the trailer up to the ocean and get rid of the evidence. So I'm sitting in the trailer with the writer. And I said to him, how long do you think this show is going to last? And everybody said 6 weeks. Now, we'd made 13 episodes. We didn't even think we'd get to show them all. Because back then in TV, if you did something daring, if you tried something different, you got canceled after 6 weeks. A great example is the show Police Squad. The guys who made the movie Airplane, we're back to Airplane. They said, all right, we're going to do Airplane for TV. They made a TV show called Police Squad. It came and went in 6 weeks. In the summer, people had nothing better to watch than Police Squad, and they didn't watch it. And it showed. And a few years later, they turned Police Squad into movies. There were 3 movies that made combined $500 million. $500 million off of something people wouldn't watch for free in their homes. So anyway, we all thought the show was going to last 6 weeks. And I always say that may be the secret of The Simpsons, was we didn't think anyone was going to watch it. So we just said, well, let's just entertain ourselves. Let's fill it with the kind of jokes we always wanted to see on TV. And if we want to make a joke about Herman Melville, let's do it, because who cares? The 6 people in the room get it. Who cares if America understands it?
So then you just really started sinking your teeth into it, and it just sort of rolled from there. What was it like when the characters were being developed, as far as who was going to be who and how they put the whole concept together?
Well, there's an amazing thing. As I mentioned, and I think any fan of The Simpsons knows, they started as 1-minute cartoons on the Tracy Ullman show. And the amazing thing is Fox and The Simpsons, they love to make money and they love to merchandise. And the one thing they've never merchandised is those original 1-minute shorts. You cannot see them anywhere. And I don't know why. And I remember watching the Tracy Ullman show, seeing the Simpsons shorts, loving them. You watch them now, the animation is very crude. The humor is a little crude. Homer talked like Walter Matthau. Everything's not quite right with them. So you can't get these anywhere. I have a VHS tape of about 1 hour of these Simpsons shorts. As far as I know, you have to break into my home to see these. But despite that, so much of what people love about the show was in these shorts, not just the whole Simpsons family. You know, all those characters are there. Grandpa's in them. Krusty the Clown is in them. Itchy and Scratchy. Matt Groening, you know, brilliant guy, managed to fit all that entire world into a 1-minute cartoon. And the cartoons start off very crude. And by the end, I think he did it for about 2 years. By the end, they start looking like Simpsons episodes. So there was a lot there. But almost everything on The Simpsons evolves of its own accord. Almost every character on the show starts off with one line. It's just,
right.
We need a janitor at the school, let's say, and we write him one line. It was Groundskeeper Willie, originally appeared in the show, and he had 2 lines. He said, "You'll be back" at the start of the show, and at the end of the show, he said, "I told you, you'll be back," right? So the day comes, we're recording it, and it's the last line of the day, okay? I just have to record Dan Castellaneta saying, "You'll be back. I told you you'll be back," and everyone can go home. And Dan goes, "Who is this guy?" I said, "No. Then, you know, who cares? Give him an accent." And I think he read him Swedish, and we didn't like that. And then he read him Scottish. Groundskeeper Willie gave him a Scottish accent. And we go, great, let's go home. So now, that's how much thought went into making Groundskeeper Willie Scottish. He's now a national hero in Scotland. And just that little notion, making him Scottish, determined how the character looks. You know, Dan, we thought of just a basic line. Dan gave him this great voice. The animators hear that voice and try to draw a character that looks like that voice sounds, and then we see the character in animation, and it's revelatory to us, you know. It was one line, and suddenly a whole person with a voice, and if it makes us laugh, he's back as a character, and he'll come back with 6 lines, and then 10 lines, and suddenly we're doing whole episodes where Groundskeeper Willie goes back to the homeland and finds the Loch Ness Monster. So that's it. That's how things grow. They're additive, and it's always at every step of the process, somebody's making it better. We write the joke. The actors always make it so much better, and then our animators bring it to life.
Absolutely. How long does it take with all of those elements, Mike, to put just even one episode together?
It takes 9 months. People can't.
One episode.
It's exactly like having a baby, where it's sort of fun to make it in the beginning, and then it's 9 months of pain, and it's expensive and messy, and then you got to look at this thing for the next 30 years. But
yeah,
it's 9 months. The long period is, we spent about a month just going from an initial concept to a very polished script. And then we do rough animation, which takes about 2 months. We do a rough black and white version of the show, no backgrounds, no colors, just to get a sense of how it feels. And then we watch that show like we were watching it at home, and then we rewrite it very heavily. We'll change maybe 30% of that show. And then we send it off to South Korea for full color animation. It's, I think, 24,000 drawings, hand-drawn drawings, to make every episode. And that's the big time suck, is 24,000 hand-drawn drawings to make the show. So end to end, that process is 9 months. 9 months minimum. Very often, it'll take us it'll be a year from the time we've written it to the time it's on the air. A couple of episodes hung around for 5 years. So we have that luxury to take 5 years on the show.
That is unbelievable. 9 months for one episode, because a lot of television, you know, they'll film, several episodes and maybe in a matter of a couple of weeks, and then it's on the air in like in a month. I don't think, most people appreciate that amount of time and care and effort that really goes into perfecting it. And I think that's part of why The Simpsons is so beloved and why it works so beautifully and has for so many years. I mean, when you think about all these years you're talking about, 3 decades plus, this must just blow you away when you think of that amount of time. Could you ever imagine, Mike, that it would have lasted this long?
Oh, absolutely not. Well, as I say, we thought it would run 6 weeks. And again, it was so hard in the beginning. I remember Sam Simon, who created the show with Matt Groening, really drove us hard. And he wanted it wasn't enough for every episode to be funny and smart and fast-paced. He wanted every episode unique. And I told him one week, I said, we can't do a masterpiece every week. And that would have been his standard, to make a masterpiece every single week. Very, very tough work. And, they're not all masterpieces. And I'll be the first to admit that every now and again we do a bad decade. But we just finished a good year. We finished our 31st year, and the fans were happy. And it sounds crazy, but you look at SNL, like we've only been on 31 years. They've been at it for 45 years, and probably spent 30 of those years people saying, get rid of it, kill the show. And then suddenly, around season 40, it got really good again. And we go to SNL now every week to find out, what's comedy's take on Trump? What's comedy's take on what's going on in the world? So it's become a super relevant show in its 45th year.
That's unbelievable. Getting some great comments in here. June says hello, and Dwayne Edmonds says hi, Mike, and Christine Fairwood says hi, all. If anybody has a question for Mike, we are here. You can type it in the comments, and he's here to answer it. And they're all saying hello. And Karen Levitt, who's in New Hampshire, she says hi, everybody. And Kathleen Walker, who's in Queens, New York, says hello. And Christopher says, what an amazing career. Karen says, outstanding career. And Shirley Leonard says, hi, great show tonight with Mike. Absolutely. Hello, Mike Reiss. Christine Fairwood says, people from Connecticut are exceptionally bright. There you go. Sonny Grasso says, thank you for the many miles of smiles. Sonny Grasso's father is the original Sonny Grasso, the New York City police detective that The French Connection was patterned after, the movie.
He just
just passed in December, as a dear friend. Yeah. And he was a consultant on a lot of the TV series, the cop shows in the 70s, like Kojak and so many of the others as well. So Sonny says hello, an incredible career. Mike Reiss from Crystal. Martha says, hi, Mike Reiss. And honoring one's passion pays off. That's Marianne Kelly. And Ralph Lampkin says, so cool. Sonny Grasso says, don't call me Shirley.
That's it. I hope Sonny has seen, he can go on YouTube and see all the times we've parodied The French Connection on The Simpsons. It's a very influential show. And in fact, I'll tell this great story, which is we were writing season 3 of The Simpsons. It was very early enough in the show, we didn't know who our fans were. And someone walked into the room and said, we just found out William Friedkin, the Oscar-winning film director. William Friedkin is a big fan of The Simpsons. And so we said, let's write a joke for William Friedkin, as long as we know he's watching. And we were writing an episode called Mr. Plow, very famous Simpsons episode. And we put in a parody of William Friedkin's movie Sorcerer. And that was it. It was the only time we ever wrote a joke for one person who might be watching. And that was it. We did the joke. And then 25 years later, I meet a friend of William Friedkin. And I said, please take him this note. And he contacted me right away and said, "Oh, I love that joke." He saw it, and we brought him to The Simpsons to a table read where he could meet the characters. And it was we've had some big celebrities at The Simpsons. Nothing was as electrifying as William Friedkin's visit to the show. Everybody loved his work so much. He was the most charming man, beautiful storyteller, wonderful guy. One of the most exciting days in 31 years of The Simpsons.
That must have been extraordinary. Dwayne has a question here, Mike. He asks, Mike, what was the trajectory on The Simpsons like as it built up as time progressed?
That is a great question, because I read, scholarly dissertations on The Simpsons, and they go, it had a small cult following and it slowly built. The fact of the matter is, The Simpsons debuted on Fox to the highest ratings in the history of the network.
Unbelievable.
Here and set records, and people, they just knew, I guess, from commercials or something, this was something they wanted to watch. So yes, we were an instant hit. I think by episode 4 or 5, we were the #3 show on television. So there was no build to it at all. It
just boom. Yeah.
Came on, and it was a very nice night. I'll tell the story real quickly. We premiered, again, we had our premiere party at a bowling alley. Again, this just shows you Fox had zero faith in the show. So they sprung for a bowling party. Basically the same party would give for an 8-year-old on his birthday. We're at a bowling alley, and then 8 o'clock that night on the screens where you usually would see your score, they showed the first episode of The Simpsons as it went out across the country. And we're all sitting in the bowling alley watching The Simpsons, and we're all going, "Oh, wow, this is good." Nobody knew it was good. None of us who'd worked on it, because again, it was such a slow grind of a process. None of us knew till we saw it on TV. We said, "Wow, this is a great show." And then
absolutely,
the head of publicity comes in with Xerox copies. Again, this is before the internet. She had collected Xerox copies of the reviews from all over the country. And the critics got it too. They said, "This is a show that's going to change TV." And that was it. And then we heard the ratings the next day, that we were.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, it was instantaneous and very brazen. And the funny story, if you've been following my story at all, is I worked on It's Gary Shandling's show, the number 99 show on TV. I spent the summer working on The Simpsons, which comes out as #3 show on TV. But I still had to go back and do another year on It's Gary Shandling's show. And, I'm working these terrible hours. And midway through the season, It's Gary Shandling's show got canceled. So the second half of the year was just writing episodes that weren't even going to air on broadcast TV. And meanwhile, my friends are all still back at The Simpsons writing the hit show that everybody loves. So the second Shandling show ended, I went running back to The Simpsons and really never left again.
Absolutely. So how did you guys not run out of juice and ideas and fresh perspective, with each episode? How did you keep that momentum going?
What it is turnover of staff. That is basically it. It's manpower and woman power. That's it. In the early days of The Simpsons, as much as we loved it and it was exciting to be there, everybody quit as soon as their contract came up. As soon as you could leave The Simpsons, you left The Simpsons. And I know everyone had these big dreams. Now I'll go create my own Simpsons. And none of that panned out. But that was it. Our original 8 writers all left the show around season 5. They brought in a new showrunner, David Merkin, and he just went on a spending spree. He had to fill this amazing void, and he had at one point 27 writers working there, and they all worked in one giant room, and it was a very tough way to work because your job is just to pitch jokes and hope everyone laughs. And if nobody laughs at your joke, you've just bombed in front of 26 other people. So that was it. He brought in 27 writers, and you know, the bad ones would leave, good ones would come in, and there came a point, I would say about 15 years ago, everyone who hung in there realized this is a great job. Never, ever quit it. So the very best, most polished writers hung in there to do the show. But we have a lot. You know, we started with 8. Now we've got about 20 writers. The other thing that I think is key to the success of the show is nobody works longer than they think they can be good. So, you know, the younger writers work a 5-day week. People who've been there a while work 3 days a week. After all this time, I'm down to 1 day a week. I go in every Wednesday. It's been suggested to me I only work an hour a month, but that's it. I work every Wednesday at the show, and every Wednesday is a challenge. It feels like my first day at the show, where I walk in nervous, and at the end of the day, if I've done good, I tell my wife, "Oh, I think they'll have me back next week." But every week feels like an audition, even after all.
Absolutely. It's amazing when you think about it. It's got to be really tough, Mike, to narrow down either seasons or specific episodes that really stand out for you personally, that are some of your own personal favorites, having been involved in the actual development of these episodes. Are there any that do stand out for you, Mike?
There's one I wrote, which is very bittersweet, which is Al Jean and I wrote the episode where Michael Jackson was a guest star on the show. And, this is, people have to think back to whatever that was, 92, when Michael Jackson was not just a superstar. There's not been a star as big as he was big at that time. No one has touched that, He was so big, and we wrote this episode for him where he did the voice of a 300-pound white mental patient who thought he was Michael Jackson. And the pressure was enormous on it. Everybody contributed great stuff. The story mostly came from James L. Brooks. Michael Jackson came in. He was a wonderful sport. He was so much fun. He was so normal. He seemed like such a regular guy you could be friends with. So that's it. I'm inordinately proud of that show because of the allegations against Michael Jackson. That show has been pulled from syndication. You can't, it will never appear again in Simpsons rotation. It was on YouTube. And before it went away forever, I said, I'm going to watch this show. I hadn't seen it in 25 years. And I watched it. I go, well, that's the best thing I ever had my name on in my life. So I have very fond feelings for it. I know why the producers made their decision. But it's too bad. It's too bad to throw something away like that. But
absolutely.
I should mention, we just today recorded our 700th episode of The Simpsons.
Did you?
Yeah, number 700.
Congratulations. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah, so we can afford to throw a couple away.
Comment coming in here from La Familia Hernandez. Hello, Jim. Hi, Mike. Alex here. Mike, you've been all over the world. What's something hilarious or crazy that happened to you during your travels? Also, I hope you write a book about your travels specifically.
Thank you, Alex. Alex, by the way, it's funny. There are two Alexes who are vying for the biggest Simpsons fan on earth. So that was one of them. I wonder if the other Alex will weigh in.
Welcome, Alex.
So anything by travel, I love it. We haven't gone into it. I've traveled to 130 countries. My wife and I are running out of countries. And my wife was this very pretty blonde Nordic woman, drags her very Jewish husband to the most anti-Semitic places on earth. So So that's it. I've been to Iran and Iraq and Syria and South Carolina, and I've been to Libya and North Carolina and North Carolina. There's a slip. I went to North Korea, and I've been to North Pole. I've been to all these places, and the amazing thing is just finding Simpsons fans everywhere I go. You know, we write the show in this dark, depressing room. It is a really sad little room where we make the show, and we're just trying to entertain ourselves and to go to Bolivia and see everyone in Bolivia loves our show, or people in Mumbai are crazy for the show. And it's like, what are you getting out of it? What are you getting? Mm-hmm. I went to Moscow, and, you know, paparazzi followed me around. I think they were paparazzi. Only now do I realize, oh, it was the KGB. But you know, they loved the show in Russia so much. And again, I think it may be just the premise that we're not thinking about the world. You know, we're just trying to entertain ourselves. We're just trying to make something we would like to see on TV.
So you were also, in addition to, you know, being producer, writer, a showrunner too, as well. Tell us about that. And did you have a preference amongst any of those? What you liked doing the most?
The showrunner, you know, Al and I have been happily writing on one show after another, and then they, in season 3 of The Simpsons, it's the biggest hit on TV. People love it. They said, "You're in charge," and it's like, oh my God, we don't want to be the guys who ruin The Simpsons. And we go from just writing jokes and writing scripts to supervising the writing, being the boss of the comedy, editing this audio tracks, directing the actors, supervising character designs and storyboards. It was about 15 jobs, none of which we had any training for. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that motivated us was fear. We just said, we can't wreck this. And Al and I worked as much as human beings can work. We worked day and night, 7 days a week. I remember during the 2 years of the show, I gained 70 pounds. I gained 70 pounds because I couldn't leave the office. I just was sitting there. I could only eat, you know, and if I didn't eat, there would be no pleasure to my day whatsoever. And in fact, the day I left The Simpsons, I finished my 2 years running the show. I went to the doctor, and I weighed 239. I weighed exactly what Homer weighs. We've established Homer weighs 239. I think he's taller than me. So in a sense, I was fatter than Homer Simpson.
That's Ken Lenzuski, who's in Wappingers Falls, New York, says, Mike,
yes,
huge fan. The Simpsons have predicted some things, haven't they? Pretty cool. An amazing show I've been watching for 31 years. Thank you, Mike. And that's amazing too, like some of the predictions that are made that actually end up happening. How uncanny is that, huh?
It's, you know, they found once no show was more predictive, had more predictions of the way we live today than the Jetsons. The Jetsons is better than Star Trek for determining future technology. So sometimes it's the cartoons. With The Simpsons, it's always, you know, if there's any formula or overarching philosophy to the show, we go, what's the stupidest thing people can do? Everyone on our show is absolutely terrible at their jobs, and the city as a whole is a bunch of morons. And somehow, by thinking what's the dumbest thing people could do, it winds up happening. So of course, the most famous example is President Trump. We made a joke about Donald Trump becoming president 16 years before it happened. And I remember when the joke was pitched, someone said, we need something dumb America would do. And somebody goes, nobody even remembers who thought of it. That's how insignificant it was. It was just one joke out of 200 that day. So somebody says President Trump, and we all laugh, President Trump. And the writer's assistant who types up the scripts turns to us. She goes, "You think that's too dumb?" So,
That's funny. You know, there's a couple of Twilight episodes that reflect the way life is too, especially the Masks episode. That is very.
I just have to remark on this, which is, if you remember the movie The Dead Zone, they I think it's Martin Sheen plays a psychotic president who's going to blow up the world, and he's not as crazy as Donald Trump. The crazy so Donald Trump is scarier than a president invented by Stephen King. And that
You know, it's funny you say that, because I've been saying everything we've been going through collectively, the pandemic, the economy, and everything else that's happening, the civil, unrest and everything. The only ones I think that could have scripted this would have been Stephen King or maybe Steven Spielberg, just in terms of the monumental nature and how it just affects everybody globally. You're getting a lot of great celebratory comments here as far as the 700th episode.
Thank you.
Let's see. Also, congratulations on your 700th episode from Austin Field. Dwayne asks, and this is a great question too, do you have a favorite character, Mike?
It's Dwayne Edmonds. Hi, Dwayne.
Dwayne Edmonds, yeah.
He's I just know him from Twitter. By the way, everyone, follow me on Twitter. I'm at Mike Reiss Writer, and I try to give the public one good joke a day, just like the Jimmy Fallon show. But,
right.
That's it. I work very hard. When I talk about the crap filter, I spend about 2 hours a day trying to come up with the best joke I can for that day. And I feel like I finally found my calling in life, which is writing jokes nobody pays for. So
what was today's joke? Do you recall that you put on Twitter? What it was?
Yeah, it wasn't even a joke. And it was the kind of thing I didn't even think it was funny. I said, Trump is just terrible in a crisis, and it's always the crisis, which is more of a fortune cookie, but people really responded to it. I love Twitter for that too, because I mean, you get a number of likes, you have a quantitative judgment of your jokes, and even after 40 years of writing jokes for a living, I never know what's going to hit people. What's going to make them laugh? What will be considered tasteless? I'll tell you a joke I wrote during the coronavirus. It's still going on, but I wrote this joke. It got the biggest response I ever got on Twitter, and I was shocked because it was so dark and it invokes the Holocaust. But it was at a time when Donald Trump was telling everybody he was trying to reopen the country like a month and a half ago, and I said, it's unfair to compare Donald Trump to Hitler, but they both seem pretty eager to kill my grandparents. And people love that show. It's like, wow, you know? So again, I'm just surprised at what works and what doesn't work, even to this day.
Absolutely. I want to show some photos too, and maybe we can have some commentary. I love this one. That is a great shot. Where was that taking place, Mike?
That is on the Fox lot. That's a couple hundred yards from where I've been working for 30 years. And, you know, it's a bronze sculpture of Homer. And I don't think you can see it, but at the base, there's a bronze donut. And, you know, I'm kissing him. I'm thanking him for a great job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tell us about this one too.
This is something I just stumbled on. I saw it through a window. It was a publicity office for The Simpsons that I didn't even know existed. It's a big enterprise, and they have you can't exactly tell. That's a giant 3D plastic version of Comic Book Guy. And it was just an office filled with these giant plastic cutouts of the characters. So I went in and took a photo like any tourist. I was excited.
Great shot there too. Love that one.
Yes, it's funny. There is an entire soundstage at Fox just covered with Simpsons characters. And everybody goes there because they think, oh, that's where the Simpsons records. And of course, you know, we don't need a soundstage. We have a tiny recording studio where we record the show. So
Hmm.
All the Simpsons characters. That's a cutout of Jay Sherman, the critic, that I had my hand on. And if you look
Right.
really closely, I'm wearing a Queer Duck T-shirt. That's the Queer Duck cartoon I
It's
created.
got it all. And you were very proud of that too, weren't you? The Queer Duck. I know that was really near and dear to your heart, that creation.
I am prouder of that than The Simpsons or The Critic. I'm very proud of Queer Duck, partly because I did it on my own, and partly because it was an act of conscience. I'd never really done anything just because I felt like it was the right thing to do. And it's I think it would be unbelievable for young people to remember this or to imagine this. It was the year 2000, and I read two articles in the paper. One said there are no gay characters on television. I mean, now every show has a gay character. There was not one gay character anywhere on TV. And I said, that's not right. And the other thing was, and again, it's mind blowing to remember, in the year 2000, Colorado passed a law saying gay people cannot be school teachers. And, you couldn't pass a law like that now. So I said, I want to do something good for gay audiences. I want to give them a character. And since I write cartoons, I created Queer Duck, who was sort of a gay Bugs Bunny. And the weird secret of it all was I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I've been married for 31 years. Not that that proves anything, but I'm not gay. I didn't choose this. This is the way I was born.
You've heard it here, folks, on the Jim Masters Show live.
It is pretty funny because Queer Duck, well, anyway, when the Queer Duck cartoons came out, they made this huge splash. It was clear there was an audience for this. And the New York Times wrote a big article on Queer Duck. And the last line of it was, and it was created by Mike Reiss, who is not gay. And I showed it to my father because he never believed anything unless it was in the New York Times. But the strange thing about creating Queer Duck was the fact that I had this terrible sense that if gay audiences knew it was created by a straight guy, they would think I was making fun of them. So I didn't say I was gay, but I didn't say I was straight either. And just like in high school, everyone just presumed I was gay. And, I got reporters would come to my house and I would hide all my wedding photos and lock my wife in the bedroom. I probably didn't lock her, but I said, stay here.
Yeah.
So it was the New York Times outed me as a heterosexual. And to the gay community's credit, they didn't mind at all. They were very happy, and they just loved this cartoon. It was again in the year 2000. It was on this Icebox website. The first Queer Duck cartoon came on, and it broke the internet. It just completely collapsed. The server collapsed. The website went down. There was just such pent-up demand for Queer Duck. And I recommend anybody who's interested, go on YouTube, look up Queer Duck. It was beautifully animated by my friend Seth Weinberg. It's voiced by a gay actor, Jim J. Bullock, who's just all of it. And that's it. If anything drove, I never want to run another TV show again. I've been, I know that was a question you had earlier, but if anybody wanted a Queer Duck TV show, I would love to do that. I just been so fond of the characters and the world it was in.
And Jim J. Bullock was on Too Close for Comfort with Ted Knight. Yeah. And he did that show. Remember, he did that short-lived talk show with Tammy Faye Baker, too.
Right. Yeah. Lovely, lovely guy. I'll tell a fun story for the comedy fans out there, which is I created Queer Duck, and I gave it to the producers at Icebox and said, if you'd rather hire a gay writer for this, I know a lot of gay writers who are great. And they said, no, you can do it, but make sure you have a gay actor playing Queer Duck. So again, I'm nervous about the whole thing. And we go in to audition actors. And the first actor who walked in was Scott Thompson, the openly gay comedian in The Kids in the Hall. And Scott Thompson walks in and just yelled at me for a half hour. I realized, oh, I was a good kid and a well-behaved kid. I'd never been yelled at like that in my entire life. He yelled at me for a half hour. What a hate crime of a cartoon this was. He made an anti-Semitic remark that was not cool. And then after doing all of that, he still went in and auditioned for the role. So he auditioned, and he would have even gotten it, except his performance was so angry. And I just thought, well, that's it. I've done a terrible thing creating this queer duck, and let's fold it up. And then the second actor who came in was Jim J. Bullock, who loved it and was so funny and instantly got the character. And I loved it. It was one of the happiest experiences of my life. And again, the thing I'm proudest of. When the cartoon went on the website, there was a little message board underneath. And I told the producers, if this is coming off as gay bashing, if people are offended, I'll pull the plug on it instantly because I'm trying to do something good here. And the comments were so nice. And somebody wrote in after an episode, if this cartoon had been around when I was 13, I would have felt so much better about myself. And I always say that's the best review I ever got in my life.
Absolutely. You never know the lives you touch, especially with the productions that you've had the glorious opportunity to be involved in. Think of the millions and millions of people that have watched your work. Another, which we talked about, of course, the Critic. Tell us about the thought process and the germ of the idea to create the Critic.
Yeah. Al Jean and I had a deal to create TV shows after we stopped running The Simpsons. Create TV shows for James L. Brooks. And he had an idea. He said, I want to do a show about the makeup woman on the Today Show. And Al and I, we didn't spark to the idea. We didn't love it, but we went home and we were thinking about it. And we said, gee, we could have a funny weatherman on the show. Oh, and the Today Show, we could have a Gene Shalit character on it. A Gene Shalit film critic. And that's what got us excited. And we'd been working with John Lovitz on The Simpsons. He'd been on several episodes, and he's just that guy. John Lovitz. I always say John Lovitz is not the character you see on TV. That's merely a character he plays 24 hours a day. So we wrote it. It was going to be a live action show. The Critic, John Lovitz playing a film critic. And like idiots, we wrote the whole script before we ever told Lovitz. And then we just presented it to him and said, this is a show you will be doing. And he said, I'm not going to do that. I'm a movie star. Because he had just been in A League of Their Own. And, he was in demand as a movie actor. So we thought we'd lost it. He said, I'm sorry. I don't want to do another TV show. And as he's walking out the door, I said, what if it's a cartoon? Because that would require so much less of his time. And he said, okay. And that was it. And I don't think any other animated show in history was created that way, where the very last creative decision was to make it a cartoon. So that was it. We did it as an animated show. It had a small cult following. I wish it had had a large, ambivalent following, but that was it. We did 13 episodes on ABC. They canceled it. I think we did another 10 episodes on Fox, and then they canceled it. We had an offer to do yet another season on another network. And I said, I just can't face being canceled in 3 networks in 3 years. So that was the end of it. The great irony, of course, is the show persists to this day. These same 23 episodes, people watch them over and over. Everyone pesters John Lovitz. When are they going to do the Critic again? So now Lovitz, he wants to do the Critic. He goes, I'll do it live action now. And but we're busy. We're doing this.
Yeah. You've got a lot going on. I'm going to take you back in time at this photo here, Mike. Tell us about this one.
Oh my goodness.
Mhm. We've been digging in the archives.
That is the Harvard Lampoon. That's where it all started. That in the lower left-hand corner, that's me. To my right is Al Jean. He's talking on an iron. And above us is our dear friend Ted Phillips, who passed away. Ted is what we were talking about. He became a very funny lawyer. He passed away young. But for Critic fans, the character of Duke Phillips, the boss on the Critic, the Ted Turner character is named Duke Phillips, named after Ted Phillips. And then to his right is a gentleman named Pat Verone, who wound up writing for The Simpsons. He spent 10 years writing for Futurama. He's now on Matt Groening's new show, Disenchantment. He's president of the Writers Guild. So, you look at this motley group of teenagers, you never know, they'd be creating TV for the next 30 years.
And do I see a bust of Nixon sitting on books in the upper right?
That's a mask. It's a
Nixon mask.
Nixon mask. It's a funny place. In fact, this is the interior of the Harvard Lampoon, and it's a humor library. It's about 1,000 volumes, all humor books. So it's something very special. Lovely place.
Here's another important time in your life as well, Mike.
Yes.
Emmys. Yeah, tell us about this.
This is the first season of The Simpsons when we won the Emmy for Best Animated Show. And it was an exciting night. Again, to Simpsons fans, the one thing that will really impress them is in the lower left-hand corner, the man with a mustache is John Swartzwelder. Now, John Swartzwelder has written 59 episodes of The Simpsons. So he's a completely unique talent who pretty much wrote 3 seasons of The Simpsons single-handedly, and he wrote shows like no one else. So, and the other thing is, he is a recluse. He is the J.D. Salinger of animation. So this is one of 2 or 3 photos that exist of him. So John Swartzwelder, then next to him is me. This is all, we're crouching in the front row. Gabor Chupo, the head of the animation studio, and then Al Jean on the end.
Really, really nice. And then you went to China and were on Chinese television too, right, Mike? Tell us about that.
Did an episode, a talk show on China. It was a Chinese TV. That show went out to 1 billion people, and
wow,
I'm hoping this show tonight is going to reach more than that.
At least, at minimum, share the links, have watch parties, tell your friends. Absolutely. So that was cool. And then there's also something involving the Pope. Tell us about this.
That's it. I've won a few awards, but this was an amazing thing. I'll try and tell the story as quickly as possible. I was at a party one night. A priest comes up to me. He pulls out his phone. He said, "You want to see the Pope's app?" And I said, "Yeah," because I thought he said the Pope's ass. But
yeah, sounds like it.
The Pope had an app called Joke with the Pope. And it somehow raised money for charity by posting clips of celebrities telling jokes to the Pope. He had Bill Murray telling a joke to the Pope. And I go, well, that's cool. And then a few nights later at midnight, this same priest calls me up. He says, "We need a joke for Al Roker to tell the Pope. And it's got to be clean, and it's got to be about religion and the weather. And I'll call you back in an hour." And I'm thinking, there's 800 million Catholics in the world, and this priest is calling the one Jew he knows, which is probably a smart move. So I wrote him a joke, and then for the next several nights, I would just get a call. "We need a joke for George Lopez to tell the Pope in Spanish. We need a joke for Mayor Bloomberg," I remember, for David Copperfield. And this was my Sudoku. I wasn't getting paid or anything. It was just sort of, here's this midnight request to come up with a joke with the celebrity and religion and clean and that kind of thing. And that was it. And after a couple of months, the site shut down because it didn't make any sense. And then a couple of months later, the Catholic Church threw the most wild party I have ever attended to celebrate Joke with the Pope. and they presented me with that certificate and Pope Francis called me a missionary of joy. So I go, well, that's a good review.
That's incredible. And then Tunisia, let's talk about this one here too. That's a cool shot.
I mentioned I've been to 130 countries.
Yes.
I recommend for anyone who wants to do something exotic and yet sort of safe. This is Tunisia, and Tunisia is just an absolutely beautiful country and beautiful beaches and resorts. But we went deep into the desert where the original sets of Star Wars, the original 1977 sets, are still standing, and it's just in the middle, way out in the middle of the desert where nothing's going to erode them and there's no water. So my wife and I made a pilgrimage to see, that's my wife on the right, pilgrimage to see the Star Wars sets. And it was, I don't even love Star Wars, but this was very, very exciting.
Right there in Tunisia. That's amazing. I tell you, you really have been all over the place, Ken, with your illustrious career. Mike, Ken says, Mike, I love Lisa episode, my personal favorite. That was so well done. Christine Fairwood, who lives in Connecticut, says, what do you remember about Bristol? All Bristol kids seemed tough to me, street smart.
How interesting. It was a tough town. I mean, I'm sort of a cream puff. It was a blue-collar factory town. We made ball bearings and springs and brass. We didn't even make things. We made things that went in other things. But I loved it. I thought it was a very warm and friendly place, beautiful and green. I always wanted to be the most famous guy to come out of Bristol. And my competition when I was a kid was Gary Berghoff, the guy who played Radar on MASH.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then, as time, and I'm not famous, but over time, people began to forget about Gary Berghoff. You don't see him anywhere. I go, maybe I'm the most famous guy. And then right around that time, Aaron Hernandez came out, the NFL player. And he got more famous, and then he killed a couple of people and got really famous. So maybe that's an honor I don't need anymore.
Here's another shot. Tell us about this one here.
Oh, gosh, I'll tell you the funny story about that because I don't even know where that's from. I think I do a lot of speaking. I speak at colleges. I speak at corporate events. I have a really fun speech I've given 500 times in 22 countries. I've been all over the world because they love The Simpsons everywhere. So I've spoken in Israel and India and China and Chile and Qatar, Russia, all kinds of places like that. And somewhere I went, they used that drawing. The funny thing about that is it's on my Twitter page. That's the main picture on my Twitter page. Now, for years, people would tell me, I follow you on Twitter. And I would always tell them, I'm not on Twitter. I don't do any social network. And finally, I said, I got to look this up, and I go on Twitter, and sure enough, there's the Mike Reiss page, and there's that picture, and then there's photos of me on vacations and that kind of thing. And it was some guy. It turned out to be someone I know, but he's a PR guy. I just felt like, I should be on Twitter. So he was stealing pictures from my wife's Facebook page and posting it. And I loved everything he did. He could have kept being me on Twitter, but I said, it's not funny. I want to make this funnier. So I asked him, do you mind if I take over my own Twitter page? And he said, fine. And again, as I say, that's something I've really loved doing since then.
And then, of course, there's this, which is near and dear to your heart, Springfield Confidential. Yeah. Jokes, secrets, outright lies from a lifetime writing for The Simpsons. Tell us about that. What was that project like?
One day, a journalist called me, a guy named Matthew Klickstein, a guy I talked to on the phone. I'd never met the guy. And he just had this proposal. He goes, Mike, you and me, we're going to drive around the country. You're going to give speeches. And we're going to do a book called Mike Reiss's America. and there won't be any Simpsons in it at all. And, you know, my mom had always told me, always accept rides from strangers. So I just said, fine. I was going to drive all over America with a guy I'd never met and make a book out of it. And so we had a book proposal, and we went into Simon and Schuster. We went in with a book proposal, and we'd been invited in. I have to say, we didn't force our way in. This gentleman invited us in, and I walk in, and the guy just goes, he looked like a bullet, too. He looked so angry. He looked like, if you remember the movie Whiplash, he looked like J.K. Simmons. He looked like in Whiplash, and he just goes, who the F are you? Who are you? Why would anyone buy this book? I said, you asked me here. He goes, you're not Tina Fey. Do you know that? You're not Tina Fey. And I go, yeah, I know I'm not Tina Fey. I noticed that in the shower today. And he just, if he could have picked me up bodily and thrown me out of the office, he would have. I just remember getting chased out of there. And I was like, why did you ask me? And Matthew Klickstein and I, we go from there to HarperCollins. And we just got in a cab, went across town. HarperCollins couldn't have been nicer. Couldn't have been nicer. They loved the idea. But the one thing I learned from their notes was they didn't want this driving around the country idea. They just wanted a book about The Simpsons, an inside look at The Simpsons. And with every rewrite, it became more and more about The Simpsons until it became, you know, good or bad, it's the definitive work on The Simpsons. This is an inside story from someone who'd seen everything in there. And the book came out. It was a bestseller. It's in Spanish. You can get it in Czech, in Russian, in German, international bestseller. It was nominated for the Thurber Prize in American Humor. So maybe I am Tina Fey.
You know, who are some of the comics, the comedians, the joke tellers through the years that you've always enjoyed, that you've always admired? Did you love Phyllis Diller, Dangerfield, a lot of the real classics,
Yeah.
George Carlin, some of the new?
I love and still love those guys. My dear wife will walk into the room and it's like, I'm watching Phyllis Diller clips or Henny Youngman clips from 50, 60 years ago. I just love these guys. I love their jokes. Yes, there was a turning point, this amazing moment when, again, people of my era, we were sitting as a family watching the Ed Sullivan Show. I was 6 years old, and Woody Allen came on. Woody Allen was just a stand-up comic then.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And Woody Allen did stand-up, and I remember thinking at 6, I go, this guy gets me. And I may not be the only 6-year-old Woody Allen got, but that was it. I just go, he's saying the things in my 6-year-old brain I'm thinking. And, you know, whatever you think about the guy, he's like a second father to me. Not that I ever met him, but he so shaped my comedy. I love his work so much. I recommend anyone who's interested, read. And, you know, if you don't have moral qualms or you can get over your moral qualms, read Apropos of Nothing. Woody Allen's new memoir is the greatest Hollywood memoir in history. And so funny. I didn't expect him to be so funny for 400 pages at age 35. It's inspiring. He's wonderfully written, perfectly candid, so humble, but just a great book. But if you do have problems with Woody Allen, buy my book, Springfield Confidential. There are no Amber Alerts out against Mike Reiss. So you can buy my book with impunity.
And then if you go back further, there was, of course, Ernie Kovacs. Remember Ernie?
I like all the good stuff. You know, there's timeless comedy is sort of timeless for a reason. And, you know, today at lunch, I was watching Harold Lloyd movies. I just love anything genuinely funny. And these things have stood the test of time for a reason, because they are funny and they reach across generations.
So you've had all this extraordinary experience, decades of experience in television, but also, like you mentioned, writing plays as well. Tell us about what it was like and what it is like writing plays and some of those differences between television script writing and writing a play.
Yes, so the biggest thing, I sort of touched on it earlier, is that the playwright is king. The playwright, whatever you write, they'll do it. And so even if The Simpsons comes out great, I go, gee, well, it's my script. I go, gee, I had a lot of help on that, and everybody made it better and that kind of thing. With the play, if it's going well, I go, well, that's me. It's literally the first time I can have a little ego trip in 40 years of writing. Is if they like it, it's me. If they don't like it, well, that's me too, and I better fix it, and I'll be up that night fixing and making it better. So I love that control. And the great story I have came in my first play in Connecticut. I wrote this tough Boston character, and he was giving a little monologue about how in Boston we call sprinkles on ice cream, we call them Jimmies. Who the hell is Jimmy, right? That was it. Hell is Jimmy? And I would go to the play every night, and every night the actor would go, who's the hell is Jimmy? I sort of loved it. I go, yeah, maybe that's how a tough guy talks. Who's the hell is Jimmy? And it was only when the play ended, I looked at my original script and saw it was a typo. So that was it. They respect the writer so much, they even do your typos.
So what are you working on now? I would imagine that during the course of everything that we've been going through, with the economy and pandemics and all of this we've experienced globally, maybe some of it has been, material that is almost being created by itself, because you are really truly an observer of people and an observer of life, aren't you, Mike?
I guess so, yes. I'm always walking around looking, and I have to say, as cynical as some of the things I've worked on, like the Critic, I really love people. I really do. And I think that's something that comes across in The Simpsons as mean-spirited, as such a dim view it has on civilization and American society. We sort of love people. And in fact, The Simpsons is one of the loveliest places I've ever worked. The people are so nice. I love seeing them every week. Warm and supportive group of people, and the writers get along with the actors. I think that's one secret of the success of the show, is that everybody likes it. Everyone likes going into work. And I read a book about MASH, and sure enough, same story. People loved each other there. Even Monty Python, those guys, they respected each other. They loved seeing each other. They entertained each other. And that's what kept that going for 50 years. Anyway, so I got to say, I've gotten a lot of great tweets out of COVID, out of George Floyd. What surprised me is just people are willing to go dark. I think I said that earlier. People are willing to laugh at the darkest stuff out there. So it's good. I'm glad I can help. I think
it's a sense of release too, isn't it? When things get so overwhelming, comedy sometimes can be a great way to maybe deamp and or just release, right?
Absolutely. I'll tell you a funny story though. The University of Chicago did a panel called "Can Comedy Change Politics?" Great topic. And they flew me to Chicago. They brought in Andy Borowitz from The New Yorker. They brought in Liz Winstead, the creator of The Daily Show. And we're all sitting on this dais. And the moderator goes, for the next 90 minutes, we will be discussing, can comedy change politics? So what's your opinion? Can comedy change politics? And we all went, no, 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 no. And the moderator went white. And she just said, oh, well, we've still got 88 minutes to fill. So that's it. I'm afraid I've learned over the years, comedy doesn't change anything. It doesn't even change people's attitudes. But if you agree with it, it's good it's out there. It's good you can hear somebody is thinking the things you are thinking. Anyway, even your question, I haven't been that inspired by COVID beyond a bunch of cheap one-liners, but I do have plays. I've been writing plays. I was supposed to have a play this summer at Utah Shakespeare Festival called Shakespeare's Worst. And I'm hoping that will be bumped to next year because the whole festival got canceled. And I'm working with your guest, June Aspa, on a Christmas play for children. I wrote a children's book called How Murray Saved Christmas. Again, book was a surprise bestseller. It was my first children's book. It wound up outselling Harry Potter when we were both out at the same time. Very popular book. It became an animated special, which is illegally downloaded on YouTube. You can see it there. Murray Saved Christmas starred Jerry Stiller as Murray. We just lost Jerry. And now turned it into a piece of children's theater that I think you can see in New York if anybody is doing theater in New York in December. It's all just a big question mark.
Absolutely. Is there anybody that you would have dreamed or dream of collaborating with in terms of personalities, actors, actresses, voice people, anybody that you would still love to work with?
No. I'm very intimidated by the people I really admire. The answer is no. There was a show, for example, a show I loved on TV was Monk. Monk sort of hit me just right. It was funny. It was sweet.
Tony Shalhoub, yeah.
Mysteries were always very clever. And I knew a lot of writers there. And they said, you can write an episode. We'd love to have you write an episode of Monk. I go, no, because then it would become work, you know? I enjoy just watching it. So, no. No, I don't really have any dreams like that, I think. You know, it's been such a lucky and blessed life that I know God is saving some real nasty stuff for me right at the end. I've had 60 lovely, wonderful years, and so I know something just horrible is going to happen right at the end. I think I'm going to go up to my waist in a wood chipper, and it'll happen on a weekend, and no one will see me till that Monday. It's going to be something like that.
It's going to be a dramatic scene, and
just mess and blood everywhere. I'll be alive just long enough to say, please kill me now. And that'll be the end. Comedy writer dies in wood chipper, which great way to go. I don't mind having a nice, funny headline on my obituary.
Well, I was going to say, my question is, will you be scripting that? And how many rewrites will there be?
Does it have to be a wood chipper?
Exactly. Is there anything, I know, because you've done, again, it's a blessing and a joy and an honor to have you with us, Mike. You've touched so many lives with your humor, your comedy, and the folks you've worked with, and you've worked with so many incredible people in the industry, with the Simpsons, the Critic, and so many other great pieces of work. You're working on plays. Is there anything on the bucket list, anything, whether it is television or plays or anything else, that you still want to do?
I would like, I wrote an original script for this movie, My Life in Ruins, and it came out just terrible. It was original, and they went off to Greece and shot this movie. I didn't even know they had shot the movie till I read it in Variety, so I was not invited, and it seemed to be just sort of a big ad-lib party in Greece. Everybody had their way with my poor script, and it came out just terrible. It's the movie got a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes, which puts it below famous flops like Ishtar and Howard the Duck. 9, you got to really work hard to get it hard to have Rotten Tomatoes. And so people go, well, isn't it worth it even to have a bad movie with your name on it? And the answer is no, it's not. It's not worth it to have a kid, even if he, shoots the Queen of England. No, it's not. So I would like to have my name. I've sold several scripts. I'm always writing movie scripts. I would like to have a really nice movie come out with my name on it. That would be great, but you know, it's hard.
It is. It is. Well, I tell you, again, when you look back at everything, I don't think you could have scripted it any better than the way it's been, right, Mike? I know you truly feel extraordinarily blessed by all of it. You couldn't have written a script like this, right?
I could not, especially me. No, I'm not that good a writer. It's something I love about the world, which is, as I say, people can see I'm not at all a good-looking man. I have no particular skills or talents. All I can do is make jokes. Somehow I can do that one thing, and that's been enough. The world has been utterly kind and generous to me because I have that one skill. So thanks, world. I appreciate it.
Well, we thank you because we've been blessed by that skill because you've run with that skill since age 8 and beyond. And Mike, I tell you, I know you're very humble about it, but it's this stuff goes down in television and film history, and it's an honor to have you here. But I know from the comments how many people are just extraordinarily touched by the humor that you and your team have really afforded all of us. And at times when, again, we could really use it, now is one of those times where humor could really be a blessing, right?
Yes, and it's a pleasure. And the things people love is the work of many, many, many funny people. And I'm glad to be a small part of it. But if I wasn't there, The Simpsons would be every bit as good as it is. But thank you on behalf of them. They're all a bunch of really nice people, and I thank you on behalf of all of them.
Well, Mike, thanks for taking time out of your day and evening to join us here on the Jim Masters Show Live. I was really excited to have you here as my guest. It's a real pleasure, and I hope we get a chance to chat soon again. The door is always open. You're always very welcome. And let's toast to your illustrious career, the 700th episode of The Simpsons as well, and many years of joy and continued success to you and your family and your team, Mike, my friend.
Thank you. 60 years old, still drinking out of a sippy cup.
That's it. Well, you know who approves of that is who you saw earlier, our friend George Burns. What do you think of George?
I met George Burns right near the end, and he was literally that size by the end.
That's it. And of course, as I showed earlier, Jeannie is still trapped in her bottle because the hair salons have been closed. So she won't come out. She lost her powers because she's been trapped in there since March. So Haji or somebody has to come and get her out of the bottle. Maybe you can see her in there blinking perhaps, but you got to have a cast of characters, right?
I'm thinking it's only been at it 6 weeks. Just think at the end of 10 years, it's going to be crammed like a junk shop. It'll be antique gremlins or something there.
You're going to have everything, right? Exactly. Well, Mike, I tip my hat to you. Extraordinary conversation. And I know a lot of people enjoyed it here on the show. And we appreciate all the time and all the years of humor and hilarity and levity. It's really made a tremendous difference on all of us. And globally, like you say, you've been to all these wonderful places around the world and people know the humor and they're truly moved by it. So thanks so much for everything that you do. Continued success and love and joy and blessing for you. And we hope to chat with you again real soon, Mike. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
You're a lovable and great host. Been a joy. Good luck with the show.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mike. You have a good night.
Good night.
And you take care of that sippy cup. Go refill it. Good night, Mike.
Good night.
Goodbye. That was funny. What an amazing individual. And he really opened up about his entire life and his existence and just, really so much about the writing process. And he was really open and honest, too, about how it all came about. And I love, too, is how he gives credit to other people and he pays homage to others that he works with. And he's obviously a very humble individual, but so talented and so brilliant, too. His comedy is absolutely spot on. And The Simpsons always has been a real predictor of many things that have really happened socially and politically. And of course, the Critic with John Lovitz was another classic, and just everything that Mike has touched really has left an indelible mark on society, and in a very positive way. A man of great brilliance and great levity and great humor. And I certainly hope you enjoyed getting an opportunity, not just to have a quick, brief question and answer, Mike, what's it like working on The Simpsons? Mike, how did you get started? But more of an in-depth conversation to really learn about the man and what makes him tick and his upbringing and some of the things that really inspire him, and how he's a real observer of life and how he turns it in with his team, which he gives credit to. It's a brilliant scripts, and has for 30 plus years with The Simpsons, did so with the Critic and so many other bodies of work, and of course working on plays and so much more. I hope you really enjoyed this interview on the Jim Masters Show Live as much as I did, because again, we really got a chance to meet the man and learn about the man in a very deep way, to give us a good appreciation for not only the body of work, but the man behind that extraordinary body of work. So we're going to wrap things up here. We've got a couple more comments coming in from around the world. And what a great interview. Instant classic. Ken, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Dwayne Edmonds, thank you very much. Watching on YouTube. Thank you for this. Very fun. I appreciate that, Dwayne. Dwayne, we are here every night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, with incredible guests, lots of love, levity, and light, and really cool stuff throughout the week. And every single day we're here, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. La Familia Hernandez says, thanks so much, Jim and Mike, for a wonderful interview. Thank you very much, La Familia Hernandez. We appreciate that very, very much. I really wanted you to, when I do my interviews, even professionally on television or radio, which I've done for years, on PBS and elsewhere, I really like to get to the core, to understand the person, to makes the person tick, and share that with you. Because now, when this show wraps up, we have a deeper appreciation of all the work. I mean, 9 months for one episode of The Simpsons. 9 months it takes for one episode to be the way they want it for The Simpsons. That's extraordinary. I don't think a lot of people realize that. I like to do interviews where we really get a full sense and appreciation for my guest and for the person we're celebrating. So thank you very much. I appreciate those wonderful comments. And Kathleen says, laughter and humor very much needed and appreciated. Yes. And that's why I was so wonderfully touched when Mike said he wanted to hop on the show and be a guest. So that really is important. And it was wonderful to have him here. He's an amazing guy. And great show. Have a terrific night. You as well. Guys, this is your host, Jim Masters, reminding you, as well as always, we say to relax. That's right. To relax, to breathe. Make sure that you love one another. Add some light and levity into your life. Try to laugh as much as possible. We can really use that about now, and care for one another. Be kind and empathetic. Take care. And even when days get rough, and we've had a lot of rough days in the last couple of months in the year of 2020, just remember that you're here. You're blessed with your health and your family and your loved ones. We're here together every night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific. And the sun will come up, the birds will chirp, the ocean tides will still come in. And that is a plus. And there's always reason to have humor and to have comedy and have levity in your life as much as possible. It actually releases those feel-good hormones, those endorphins. So laugh as much as possible. I try to as well. And how could you not? I mean, when you have characters like Jimmy, wasn't he talking about Jimmy's in Boston? Jimmy and Silver, and you got George Burns, and you've got Jeannie over there. Guys, you have a wonderful night. You relax. You breathe. Tomorrow night, we've got Screen Actors Guild award-winning actor Dwight Turner joining us. We're going to have a wonderful interview with Dwight, television, film, and commercial actor. He's all excited to be here on the show. So he will be here 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow on the program. Just wanted to remind you as well that if you would like to see any of the past episodes with our amazing guests, just go to the YouTube channel, to Jim Masters TV. You can see all the great episodes. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to. That, of course, helps the channel. And you can find them here on Jim Masters TV on Facebook as well. So for all of us here, the entire gang at the Jim Masters Show Live, this is Jim Masters. Thanking you for your time this time. Till next time, we thank our very, very special guest. We'll pull up another cool picture of our guest. There he is. Mike Reiss. Don't forget his book, Springfield Confidential. You'll want to check that out. There, of course, The Critic. And, of course, The Simpsons. And more of The Critic. He's really been blessed to be involved in so many phenomenal projects. He's a cool cat, great guy, speaks from the heart, authentic and honest and real. And he's just really amazing. And again, the Emmy, the very first Emmy that he shared that with us, that the Simpsons team won. Really amazing. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to wrap for tonight. This was an extended episode of the show because we had such an amazing guest here, Mike Reiss, TV comedy writing legend from The Simpsons, The Critic, and so much more. For all of us, you have a great night. Thanks for being with us on the Jim Masters Show Live. The entire team will be here, the cast of characters, and myself, your host, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Till then, for all of us, thank you again for being with us. We will see you tomorrow night. Have a great rest of your night. And I hope you fill your sippy cup too, like Mike is. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being with us on the Jim Masters Show Live. We'll see you tomorrow night. Bye.